يا بلادي يا مصر بحبك يا مصر
بحبك يا مصر بحبك يا مصر بحبك وقلبي رفرف في جنبي بلحظة ما أقولك بحبك يا مصر بحبك وقلبي رفرف في جنبي بلحظة ما أقولك بحبك يا مصر بحبك.
Hello everybody, and thank you very much for coming to libertasforyou.com. We have around 100 email or so, pretty much from all the subject that we have on the internet. That one looks like the subject that everybody was asking. How to immigrate to the US. That's the main question that we always got asked with, how to immigrate or come to America. So today obviously the conversation is going to be how to immigrate to America and how to live in America. First of all, we'd like to talk about immigration in general. Immigration is the way we look at it right now after being so long in the, or how many years in the US, 20 years average between everybody here. We're looking to immigration as a big hole in the ground. Whether you jumped in it voluntarily or you fell into it by accident or mistake, well, you're in it anyway. So whether you get an invitation to come and work in the US or you did everything you can do to come to the US, like I did, for example, the whole thing is it's a hole in the ground and now you are in it. So our conversation today is going to have two parts. Part one, should or should not immigrate to the US or America or any other country, doesn't matter. The part two is, if you decide after listening to part one to immigrate to the United States, we will tell you how to do it pretty much better than how we did it, better than us. We're hoping that you do a lot better than we did. We did very well, we're doing very okay, but we're hoping if you really decided to immigrate in the end, how you would do it better than us. A lot better than us, we hope so. Immigration is a process that you really have to understand it. I didn't. I didn't understand how it works. All I did, I just came to the United States. But right now, our goal is to help everybody thinking about immigrating or in the United States already. So if you're somebody that in the United States and you just came like a year or two or a couple of years or whatever, and you're watching us, please listen carefully. We have a lot of really good things that you really need to understand. The way we look at it is a very simple thing. There was a little story that we read somewhere. A guy fell in a hole and asking and screaming, for everybody to help him. A priest passed by him and the guy shouted, "Holy Father," or "Father, help me get out of this hole." So he prayed and a little bit and said, "God will help you," and he left. Then doctor passed by. "Oh doctor, please help me." So he wrote him a prescription and threw it in the hole and left. His friend passed by and he said, "Hey buddy, help me." So his buddy jumped in the hole with him. So the guy was like, "Why did you jump in the hole with me?" He was like, "I was here before and I know the way out." So in a way, we know how to do it right, but we know we're not going to get a second chance. So if you really decided to come to the United States, or you are in the United States for a year or two or so, you are our second chance, and we hope you do a lot better than us. So please do not fast forward to the part where it tells you how to live in America. Just listen to the whole thing from the beginning to the end to have a perfect idea about the whole thing. So hopefully when you decide to come to America, or if you live in America, you have a much better chance than us. Hopefully a lot better than us. So before you immigrate, you have to ask yourself. We're talking that if you not in the United States yet. Before you immigrate, you have to ask yourself this question. It's a very important question. Are you going back to Egypt or not? Are you immigrating for good? Are you going to stay in the United States till you die? You have to really understand this question, and you have to answer it very faithfully to yourself. Are you going to go back to Egypt someday, or are you going to stay in the United States for the rest of your life? Because the outcome is very different, and the way you work it, it's very different. Do you want to come back with money? Like, let's say you decided to go home someday. You go to Egypt. We're talking about Egypt and the United States again because that's what we know. So if you decided to go back to Egypt someday, you need to ask yourself, do I want to have a lot of money when I go back? Or do I want to have a title, like a doctor or a professor or an engineer or a physicist or whatever? I need a title. I need something. I need to go back to Egypt as the CEO of a company. A title. Okay? Or I just want to have money. I don't care what I do. I just want to have a lot of money when I go home. Or I want to go back with both. So you have to really decide how you're going to go back home. I didn't know all that when I came to the United States 23 years ago. And a lot of people didn't know that. We just came because we had no future in Egypt. There was no jobs. So we didn't know what to do. And we did what everybody else is doing. Everybody in Egypt for the generation 20 years ago. I was saying that I'm going to finish college, go to the military, spend my time, and leave. Go somewhere, go to abroad, whether Europe or the United States, live for a little bit and come back and live the happy life. That was the thought. But nobody told us what's the variables that we're going to have when we go overseas. We didn't know. All right? The sad part is, after 20 years, people are still saying the same exact thing in Egypt. My nephews saying the same exact thing. Uncle, I want to leave the country. That was a conversation actually took place a month ago. I want to leave the country, I want to go to the United States, live for a little bit, couple of years, 4 or 5 years, make some money and come back to Egypt and start a project or a company or whatever and live the good life. I promise you, it never ever happened that way. That's why we said immigration is like a whirlpool. You jump in and you can't come out because it's not that easy. So the sad part is, I said the same thing 20 years ago. I'm going to go to the United States, find a really good job, have a good job, make some money, and come back. That was 23 years ago. I'm doing very well. I have a good life. And it's very hard to go home right now because all the variables I didn't know, and nobody ever did. Nobody knew that we're going to have a revolution. Country's going to go in a very extreme chaotic state. Variables you cannot control. And you don't know. When I said this before, my brothers said this before me 20 years ago. So for almost the last 40, 60 years, every young person in Egypt saying exactly the same phrase. I'm going to go overseas to Europe or the United States, stay there for 2, 4, 5 years, make some money, and come back, start a business, and live the life, live the dream. It never happened that way. So if this is really what you're thinking right now, and I hate to say that, but if this is really what you want to do, please listen to us to the end of the whole discussion. And if this is your decision in the end, hopefully we'll give you a good advice. What we need to understand is, what's the difference between travel and immigration? All our life we heard there are 7 benefits in travel. It was kind of a nice thing we heard in school, 7 benefits in travel. And we all lived by that. But nobody explained to us that there's something called travel and something called immigration, We didn't know the difference. Immigration, that means you leave in your country, your home, your family, your kids, your wife, your brothers, sisters. You're leaving everybody to live somewhere for a year or 2 or 3 or 10 or 20, or you stay for the rest of your life in this country you're going to. Travel, that means you're going to travel throughout the summer month, stay there for 2 or 3 months or so, make some money, come back, go to school, finish college, come back, work in Egypt. Travel. You're just going to a very short period of time and coming back. That is a wonderful thing. You learn a lot, you meet people, education, expand your horizon. Wonderful. But the problem is we don't understand that when we said travel. We thought it's immigration that has 7 benefits. Actually, it doesn't. It's very different. So now I understand what immigration is and what travel is. 2 very different and separate things. The benefit and losses in immigration, it's very, very scattered all over the place. So let's just investigate what is losses and what's benefits. I'm not a pessimist, but just let's talk about losses first. Immigration, when you immigrate to another country, here are some of the things that you might lose, or you might lose all of them, or some of them. Again, it all depends on what you're doing and how you lived your life when you immigrated to, again, we're talking about the US, but if you immigrated to any other European country. The first thing you lose is stability, because you're always living between 2 countries, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Your family and whatnot, and your job and your future. You're never stable, ever. Even if your wife and kids with you, you're still not very stable. So stability is a very hard thing to maintain. Family, I don't want to talk about a lot of my family, but I just lost a lot of people in my family and I haven't seen. Lost sisters, mother, and I don't want to talk about this, it's just not a happy subject. But you're going to have a lot of people of your family dying on you, and guess what? You can't even go see them. You'll hear that your mother is very sick, and you can't go see her. Because if you go, you're going to lose your job. The job that you worked really hard to get, and really hard to excel at, you can lose it over something like that. So, that's another thing that you really have to think about. Are you willing to lose your family? Because you will. Heritage, you're going to lose your heritage piece by piece. Because this is in our culture. If you live with people for more than 40 days, either you become them or they become you. You cannot change everybody around you. It's not going to happen. So you have to really hold yourself with hand of steel so you don't completely change. Because everything around you telling you you need to change. You need to be better. You need to be more sophisticated. You need to be whatever. But you will change. And the problem is, are you going to change 100% or 90 or 40 or 20? That's another thing that you're really going to fight every single day, especially if you live in a culture like the United States. Your religion, I'm not the best Muslim right now. I did a lot of things wrong. I'm still doing a lot of things wrong. So it's one of the biggest things that I'm not going to say you're going to change your religion, even though a lot of people change their religion. A lot of people change their religion to the point of that some religion like Jehovah's Witnesses, which you don't know what they are if you're in Egypt, but one of these religion that knock on your door every single day, try to convert you to become Jehovah's Witness or a Christian in a Jehovah's Witness group or whatever, every single day, to the point that they start to make books written in Arabic because they are so targeted to the Arab community, Arab Muslim community. They're so focused on them. Why? Because churches in the United States, it's all driven, sad to say, by money. Because you pay like 10% of your income to the church, to a specific church. In the Islamic religion, it doesn't matter where you go to pray. In the United States, it's very different. Every church wants you to come to pray at their church. Because when you come, they ask you for offering every time you go on Sunday. That's just money you put in a basket. And at the end of the year, you pay around 10%. 10% of your income. So it's really money driven. So everybody wants you to come to their church. Not just to go to practice anywhere. We want you to come to our church. So your money come to us. So things like this, almost on a daily or weekly basis, you're going to be facing. And a lot of people by the hundreds changed their Islamic religion. Now they are Christian, Jehovah's Witnesses, or evangelists, or whatever. But this is something that you have to face, and you will face. And guess what? If your wife is American, you will. And if you have kids from an American wife in the United States, well, good luck with that one. That's not an easy one. If your wife from Egypt, and you're from Egypt, and you're living here, and you have kids here, chances are it's a 50-50 shot that they will be Muslim. And I promise you, brother, it's not a joke. It's a very serious thing. So that's another battle that you're going to be facing every single day. Your kids, that is the biggest challenge you will face if you ever get married here, whether Egyptian or American woman, and you live here. Because guess what? Everybody around you is going to be telling your kids, you're wrong, we're right. TV, newspaper, magazine, textbook, radio, songs, their friends, their teachers, everybody going to tell him, you're not right, we're right. He's an old-fashioned, third country kind of guy. Which is, I hate that term, but a lot of people use it here. But you're going to be faced with a battle. Your chances to win it are really, really slim to none. Then there's other things with kids that I don't know what you're going to do if it ever happened. For example, if you have a gay son, it's a possibility because you can't touch your kid. If your kid came and tell you anything, you cannot touch them. You cannot raise your kids the way you want to raise your kids. If you touch your kid, he can lift up the phone, well actually do this because now it's cell phones, and dial the police. And the police will come and arrest you. If your son told you he's gay, you can't do anything. If your daughter came and told you I have a boyfriend, you can't do anything. If your son told you to get out of his room, you can't yell back. My whole point is, I have a dozen of friends here. Some of them Egyptian, some of them from other Arab countries, but they're Muslim, their wives are Muslim, whether from the US or overseas, like from back home. You should see their kids. They're a bad sight to see. Nobody can tell the kids anything. And their kids having earrings, long hair. I don't want to talk about anybody, but my whole point is, it's a battle you will lose. So, again, good luck with that one too. Culture, customs, and traditions. If you are so holding to your customs or culture and tradition so hard, your kids will hold it a little bit looser. Their kids, they wouldn't even know where Egypt on the map is. So basically, you are setting your family for a loss. You gonna lose 20%. Your kids gonna lose 50. Their kids, they're gonna lose 80 or 90. By the second or third generation of your family, forget Egypt, forget the religion, forget the customs, forget the tradition, forget your culture. So basically, you lost your family to whatever country you're going to. think about that before you make the decision to immigrate, not to travel. If you travel for 3, 4, 5 months to work somewhere and make money and come back, it's not bad. If you got married and have kids, leave them back home, go work for 3, 4 months and go back. But if you're going to immigrate, you really need to listen to what we're talking about. We did not know that when we left Egypt. Hopefully you see what we didn't see. Respect to yourself and your family. We heard a lot of things that people said to us, and we had fights and went to jail because somebody said things like, you know, whatever Arab something or whatever Muslim something. I had a fight with somebody and I almost got arrested just because I have a badge of Egypt on my car. He followed me for almost 15 miles on the Golden Gate Bridge just to tell me I am a camel jockey, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. But what happened is, I beat the living crap out of him, I got arrested, we talked with the cops, they decided it was a bad thing, and everybody just went home. But that happened a lot. I lost an interview, for example, because I was talking to somebody on the phone and kept asking me what I'm from. I said, I'm from Egypt. After like the third or the fourth time he asked me. As soon as I said that, 15 seconds, conversation was done. Thank you very much. We'll call you if we would like to hire you. Of course, he never called back. I'm not saying a lot of people like this, but I mean, that's there. So you need to understand that. And some people are going to disrespect you just for the hell of it. Your own kids, with time, they're going to look at you as, you don't understand what we're talking about. You're an old guy. We're the kids. We're the youth. You don't understand what we're talking about. And again, like we said before, everybody's going to tell him you're right. He's wrong. So now you have a battle that you can let. You cannot tell your kid to eat his breakfast if he doesn't want to. Think about it. How your kids raised in Egypt, how you were raised and how you talk to your father, forget all that. It's not going to happen. Divorce, if you got married from an Egyptian woman or an American woman, is this vulture that always hovering over your head if you got married. And it's a very big subject, so we're just going to hold on it for just a second. We'll talk about divorce specifically again. And always think about the holiday season when it's Eid or Ramadan or something like this in Egypt and you're by yourself here, then everybody have the Christmas season and whatnot and the holiday season and the end of the year here and you're by yourself. Or it was people that celebrating Christmas and everybody's celebrating the Christianity or Judaism and whatnot, and you are like, you know, sitting in the room, what's wrong with this picture? So that's just another thing that could bother you or not. But again, it's just something that will be there. Think about these things. Nobody ever told us about this. We were learning very, very differently. And that was a little bit hard for us when we came here to see all that and we were like, wait a minute, we didn't know that. So, it's not just get on the plane and come here. I understand everything in Egypt right now, it's really bad. And I understand things in Egypt 20 years ago was bad. And before that, I understand. But it was bad because we're going through a really horrible time. I know you're saying 40 years of bad time. Guess what? It's actually 60, 70, or 100 plus years of bad time. Egypt never had a good time. Egypt was invaded by the Ottomans, the French, the Brits, the kings that came after that, then the president that came after that. We really never had a chance for a good life. I think the last life that we have that was good, it was Sir Saladin's time. Salah ad-Din. That was the last time Egypt lived well. But again, if everybody's leaving, nobody will be there to fix. So you just can't give the country your back and leave. I know it sounds like a very hypocritical thing. I know. But when we left, again, nobody told us anything. It was, we always looked at the luxury and the good life. And it was always out there. You have to leave to have a good life. So that's what we looked at. And the thing is, when luxury doesn't exist, people act differently. So because we're not a luxurious country in Egypt right now, people are not 100% cooperative. But we're good people. If you want to look at a really prime example, look what happened to New Orleans when the flood happened. The state or the city was completely gridlocked for like almost a couple of weeks. People were just like fighting. There was bodies floating in the rivers. There was no food or water. People just lost the basic humanity of life. It was just bad time. We are in this bad time, it's just for that long. And we're hoping someday that things will be a little bit better. So that's what happened in New Orleans. It's just because when basic, luxurious life goes away, things are very different. And that's where we're at right now. It just lasted for that long. So the question that you need to ask yourself, among everything else, you, your wife, your kids, what are you going to marry? Where are you going to live? Where and how long? And if you're going to go back or you're going to stay in the United States for the rest of your life. That's a very, very important question. You have to understand it. You really have to ask that 100 times until you understand the question 100%, then you answer it. And the other thing that you need to know what you're up against. Right now, if you are 25 or 22 or 27 or somewhere between 20 and 30, or you're thinking bathing suits, girls, money, freedom, I can do whatever I want, it'll be fun, it'll be happiness, good clothes, whatever. That's basically your surrounding right now. That's what you're looking at. And if you have better goals or better visions than this, good for you. But you need to understand everything around what you're doing. The other thing that you need to understand really well, where are you going to get married? Are you going to get married from Egypt or the United States? Then are you going to bring your wife with you here? Or you're going to marry from the United States and stay here? And here is another thing that you need to think about. Family laws. That's two words going to scare the crap out of you if you ever got divorced. And in the United States, divorce rate is 73, 70, 80%. That's mean out of 100 people going to get married, 80 will get divorced. And family laws in the United States are made to kill or castrate the man. Period. You're really going to get screwed if you're married, get divorced, and you're having a decent living. You will really regret it. So if you want to do that, you need to be really aware of what you're doing. Understand what marriage is. Understand what divorce is. Understand what happened to your kids. Understand what custody is. Understand what alimony is. And a lot of other things. So understand that very, very well. So marriage is a wonderful thing to do. And you will need to do if you're traveling. I mean, if you're immigrating somewhere. I mean, you will marry somewhere. Whether from here or there. From the US or in Egypt. But you have to understand the difficulty of marriage. And here's another really hard thing to understand. The difficulty in marriage between American couples is really not that easy. American couples have problems, tons of it. Again, almost 8 out of 10 get divorced. And they're both American, they're both Christian. Okay? Now here is the ticker. You're Muslim from Egypt with your customs and traditions. Then you married an American that's Christian with her customs and tradition. That will be a challenge that so far I haven't seen it succeeded. If there's anybody watching this video and you are an Egyptian, have an American wife, and you're living together for 20, 30, 40 years, please contact us. Would love to hear from you. We would love to hear from you. The only one that I know of that married somebody out of his country, it was Taha Hussein. He married Suzanne when he was in Paris. That was a very different, unique situation. I don't think it ever been repeated. Again, if there is anybody watching this and you are Egyptian, Muslim, married an American woman for over 20, 30, 40 years, please call us. Would love to talk to you. So, to the average people that got married or will get married from an American woman or whatever, you really need to understand that marriage is not an easy thing between American couples. Now, interracial couples, that's going to be very hard. And if you have an Egyptian wife, I really hate to scare you on that part, but this is very, very, very different too. I'm going to give you 2 examples. Examples are a lot. Here is 2. A friend of mine, his name is Muhammad, and another friend of mine, his name is Sammy. Muhammad married somebody from Egypt, brought her with him here. They lived for 6 years, had a really nice boy. Sleeping next to her in his own bedroom, somebody knocked on the door, 8 o'clock or so. He went to open the door. Guess what? She had a divorce case against him, and the guy was serving him. He read the envelope, went upstairs. Are you applying for divorce? Said, yeah, I'm tired. I don't want to get a divorce. She's Egyptian and Muslim. And he brought her all the way to here. Live in a beautiful home, beautiful car. She have nothing to do except just keeping her kid and her home and her husband happy. Never happened. And now Muhammad went through hell after that. Second one. He came with his wife from Egypt. It was a company that wanted him to work with them for 2.5 years on some kind of trade ship or something like that. The company just needed somebody from Egypt. They have a branch in Egypt, and he said, just send us somebody to train here, whatever the story may be. It's been quite some time now, but anyway, he came with his wife from Egypt. They're both 28 years old or so. They stayed here for 2.5 years, 3 years, whatever. Then his invitation ended, and he told her, we're leaving in a month. Here's what she said. I don't want to go home. What do you mean you don't want to go home? I don't want to go home. I want to stay here. I'm just going to stay here for a year or so, then I'm going to come home. The guy is a very, very well-educated man. He said, my wife doesn't stay by herself in the United States. If I leave, I'm going to divorce you before I go. And what she said, okay. So he left and she stayed. Last I heard, she was dating a guy from Ukraine. This is the stuff that we didn't know. Nobody ever told us this is a variable thing that could happen. But it does. So you really have to understand all these things before you immigrate to another country. So whether an Egyptian wife, and again, that can do that, or an American wife, which is 90%, she will do that because you have no control over the subject whatsoever, you really have to understand what you're getting yourself into. Here is another thing. I'm just going to tell you this now and we'll talk about it later because I need to gather my thoughts. Your kids, if you decided to have kids and you decided that your wife is a wonderful, solid woman that you brought from Egypt and she is the one that's going to be your spinal cord and she will hold you, and you really trust her, and you came to the United States or you brought her to the United States, you can live with your wife as long as you want. As long as you really, really having a good time and enjoying her company and everything is wonderful. But here's the other ticker. If you have kids, or you decided to have kids, from the day you have the kid born, you have a 10-year countdown. Why? Because if the kid reaches a certain age, you cannot control him either. So you have control over the kid up to 10 years, give or take. Once the kid 10 years old, you need to go home. You need to go to Egypt. You need to. Not you should. You have to go to Egypt. Because after 10 years, it's a whole different game. You're going to lose control systematically about the whole subject. And suddenly, God knows what your kid is going to do when he grow older. And now he can say whatever he wants or do whatever he wants. So from the first day you have a kid, you have 10 years. Then you go home. Organize your life on that. So put on a calendar, 10 years, 9 years, 8, 7, and so. Till the last year, start say 12 months, 11 months, 10 months, and whatnot. And you really have to go home. Because if you don't, I promise you, you will regret it. I know two people. The father is a sheikh of a mosque, and the wife is the most religious person I know. Both of them, their kids are daughters. Every one of them live in a different state, and that's quite all right. So I don't want to explain anymore, but I'm sure you're smart enough to understand what I'm trying to say. You're not going to have any control over your kids if they grow in the States. So you need to understand, once you have a kid, 10 years, and you have to go home. Earlier is better, later is worse. So just to have this in the back of your mind. So as you can see, if anybody told us all this when we were growing up, that the grass is greener where you water it, we would have stayed. We would never have left the country. But again, when we grow up, we didn't know. We just saw everybody talking about Europe and the United States, and we had no future in Egypt. So we didn't know what to do. Then we came to the United States to live the American dream. The American dream as we see it right now, after 20 plus years in the United States, this is just me. There is other people, 30 plus, 40 plus. The American dream, to put it in English, is applying for food stamps in a mink coat. Meaning, you have a beautiful car and you live in a room. You cannot afford more than a studio apartment, but you have a beautiful car. You wear a really nice suit and there's not a dollar in your pocket. You own your house, but the bank can control it. Because the power of financial stability in the United States, it came down to one thing. How much money can I borrow so I look the part? But I don't have the part. I am not the part. I just look the part. I look perfect, but I'm not. Everybody brag in the U.S. about how much money they can borrow. My credit card have a credit line of $100,000, and I don't have 20 bucks in my pocket. I don't have $20 in my pocket, but I can borrow $100,000. That's why a lot of people do bankruptcy. A lot of people jump off bridges because they put themselves in debt and they can't get out of it. The power of your financial stability should be how much money you have in your pocket and what you can buy in cash. not how much money I can borrow. So act as if is really not the way that you should live your life. But that's what it is in the United States. Act as if you're the richest man in the world. Act as if you're the most educated, sophisticated guy around. Act as if you have everything, but you don't. So you have to have a nice suit and a nice car. Doesn't matter where you live. Doesn't matter if you have money for the gas for the car. But you have the nice, beautiful Escalade, for example. Keeping up with the Joneses, as they always say it as a joke in the United States. Keeping up with the Joneses. Anyway, it's a joke just to keep up with the rich people, even though we're not rich. So the benefits or the financial gain and or the educational part that you get when you immigrate is very slim. Is very, very slim. When you immigrate or you live somewhere else, if you're lucky, you'll make some money. That's what it is. If you're lucky, you're going to make some money. That's your pinnacle of a successful immigration story or life. After 20 years, you look at what you did and said, yep, I'm living okay. I'm making money. I'm living very well. That's the ultimate. That's the pinnacle of your success. And if you studied or have a PhD or you have a title, a CEO or a doctor or engineer or whatever, that's your other gain. That's your second gain. So it's either a money or a title. That's what it is. But here's the thing that you need to understand, the difference between making money and making a career. Because that's another thing that you need to understand if you really decided to immigrate and live again in the United States, because that's the country we know. You have to understand the difference between financial stability and making a career. I'm going to tell you what I did. Not proud of it. It's not the best way. It was a decent way. But that's what I did. When I came to the United States, all I wanted to make was money. That's it. So I made money. Not millions, but I made good amount of money. Live in a nice home, have a nice car, have a very good life. But I did not think of my future. What I'm going to do when I'm 40 and 50 and 60. That's the difference between financial gain and a career, building a career. So it's very different. Now that I'm late 40s, I'm thinking, did I do it the right way or not? And looking back on my life, there is so many things I could have changed. And I would be much better now. So if you're listening to me and you decided to listen, not just hear me, listen to me, hopefully you do a lot better than I did. So if your plan and you decided to immigrate to the United States after our conversation and that was your decision, I totally understand. But the things that you need to understand is you always have to have a plan A. You have to have a goal, a target, a way that you're going to do things. You have to have a plan A. That is what I want to do in 20 years. I'm going to be this, and this is the plan to get to it. That's my path to go to it. So plan A, you can dream about whatever you want to do. Okay? But when you're like 30, okay, dreaming is done. You really need to act now on whatever you have in your hand. So 30 is like your wake-up call. Consider you're 30 years old. That's your wake-up call. Now what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Okay? And your plan A, either you start to execute it, or at least you start to have a plan. So take your 20s as you try and find yourself. You try and find what you like. Do whatever you want. Whatever. But 30 years old, that's it. There's no time to waste. And you really need to look at your 40s. There's no dreaming anymore. So you're dreaming up to your 30. You're putting the plan and you're working on it. So by your 40s, you're done you're as good as it can be with whatever you decided to be. And your 50s is pretty much you're enjoying what you achieved in your 40s. Okay? So when you walk into your 60s, you're not looking for a job, you're not having a hard time living, you're not trying to live from one paycheck to one paycheck. Your life would be decent when you're 50 on. So, whatever you are doing in your 30s, that's what you need to perfect and you need to be awesome at. Whatever that is. So, in the United States, there is a say. Again, if you live in the United States, you already know it. If you come into the United States, you're going to hear it a lot. Jack of all trades and master of nothing. That means you know a little bit of everything, but you're not really good at one thing. سبع صنائع والبخت ضايع. That's in Egypt, we say that. So the whole thing is, you have to have a plan A. Okay? Organize it, put the steps, put the goal, put the achievement, everything. My 20s to learn, my 30s to train and to be really good, my 40s is to perfect it, my 50s is to enjoy it. So think that way. So, how to find what you're going to be perfect at? Or you're master of something. Well, if you're lucky enough to become a doctor or an artist or good enough to become a doctor or an artist or an engineer or somebody that have already a job that is already known what he's going to do for the rest of his life. If you are in the military, obviously you're going to be in the military for the rest of your life. You just need to be really good at it. So if you're lucky enough to have that kind of career, fine. But if you don't, now you need to find out what you have a passion about, what you really like. So whatever you're good at and whatever the first thing that you come around or come your way or something that you like, somewhere around your 30s, if you figure out something like that, that is your passion. That's what you need to stay with for the rest of your life, especially if you're good at it. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I came to the US. I wanted to be a physical therapist and I wanted to become an attorney. None of them itemized. It was always very hard. I found that I have to have a loan. That's like a $100,000 loan. In Egypt, we're not used to have a loan that big to go to school. Then you spend probably half the rest of your life paying your debt to school. We're not used to that. So the idea was really weird. So I just couldn't do it. So I started to find what I'm good at. I found I'm really good with people. I can talk to people. I'm very relaxed around strangers. Strangers to me are just a 5-minute conversation. So I started to do sales. And sales and marketing, and I became really good at it. And that's what I do now. I work in sales and marketing in a pharmaceutical company. And I'm doing very, very well. So, if you don't have a set career, find what you're passionate about, whatever that is. Lately, I start to be very passionate about aviation, to fly. I'm a pilot. So I start to look for something to do in this career for the rest of my life. It's a lot of fun. My whole point is try to find what you're passionate about so you can continue for the rest of your life doing something that you really like. And hopefully when you find something like this, and I'm saying in your 30s, because you're in your 20s, you really don't know what you want. Unless if you're a lucky guy and smarter than me, which is I'm sure you are, and you find out what you want in your 20s. But if you don't, that's quite all right. So your 30s are when you decide what you want to do. What am I passionate about? What I want to do for the rest of my life. Then that's what you start to work on. So hopefully in your 40s and so on and so forth. So try to love what you do until you do what you love. We heard it 1,000 times, but it makes sense after your 30s. So whatever the thing that you decide that's your passion, and that's what you're going to work on, and as we said, you're going to give it your 30s. So When you're 30 up to 39, whatever that is, your passion, that's what you're going to work on, and you perfect it, and you give it literally, and I mean literally, 110% focus, and become the best that you can in whatever that is. The average American person read like maybe 5 books a year. If you start to read 1 book every month about whatever that passion thing is, you will be probably in 5 years one of the top experts. And that is your best thing to do. So when you walk into your 40s, you are an expert on something. And now you have a status, a title, and you're probably going to have money too. So that's what you need to think about. Let me tell you something that I did. And I think it was a big mistake. I could have been doing much better than what I'm doing right now. But again, trial and error is the worst way to learn anything in the world. Let me say this one more time. Trial and error is the worst way to learn anything. I lived all my life in the United States for 23 years now, trial and error. I go up and I do great, then I make a mistake. Then I do off very fine, then I make another mistake. I hope that I found somebody to tell me what I'm telling you right now, but I didn't. So I learned everything, cost me money, time, and effort. So the mistake that I did, when I came to the United States, all I wanted to do was money. I just wanted to make money. Okay? My dreams were very simple. I focused on money, and that's all I did. I didn't see me when I'm 50. Okay? There was another guy with me. We worked in a pharmaceutical company. I don't want to mention the name because I don't know. I don't want anybody to bother me. But anyway, we both started at a pharmaceutical company. He knew what he was doing because he lived in the United States till he was 27. I came to the United States at 27. I had no idea what I was doing. But he came to the company with 3, 4, 5 years experience in the pharmaceutical. To me, I was brand new. All I wanted a good job to make money. But he came to the company knowing exactly what he wants. So when the time came, I went to another company with more money. His name is Lou, this friend of mine. He said, nope, I'm going to stay with this company and I'm going to continue with them. He stayed with them for, I'll say, around 15 years now. 18, 19 years, something like that. He is now a vice president of a pharmaceutical company. I am still a salesperson, a pharmaceutical representative in a pharmaceutical company. I am a senior pharmaceutical consultant in a pharmaceutical company. I'm doing very well, but he's doing much better than me. He's managing around 400 people. I am managing myself. So I did good. I could have done a lot better if I know what I was doing. But I didn't. على رأي زي ما بنقول في مصر احنا ولاد كفر الغلابة غلابة نضحك غلابة نبكي غلابة حتى برضو لما نحلم أحلامنا زينا غلابة. I would love to translate this to English, but it's not going to make any sense. It talk about when you come from a very poor background, your dreams are very minimal. Your dreams are very small. So your biggest dream is just to do the basic things. To have a nice car, a nice house, and that's all you're thinking. You're not thinking, I want to have a plane and a jet and a mansion, and you're not there. 20 years ago, I didn't expect myself to do all that. Now I'm thinking I should have done a lot more. But my whole point is, I'm trying to put you where I ended. I want you to start where I ended. So you start as much better, a lot better than me. Start where others ended. Don't reinvent the wheel. See what other people did and try to do better. Use that as experience, and that's what I'm giving you here. And I hope you stayed with us till here and didn't fast forward. If you fast forward, go back. There's a lot of good things you missed. So as you can see, this is something that I wrote one time in my book, my agenda, my diary, whatever. It goes like this. The more you know, the more you will find out how much you did not know. This is something I wrote as a note to myself. I didn't read it anywhere. I put it together. The more you know, the more you will find out how much you didn't know. So if you're thinking about immigrating to the United States, whatever you know right now, I promise you, there's going to be 10% of what you're going to know 5 years from now. It's going to be less than 3% 20 years from now. So try to understand what we're trying to say to you. Again, we said before, immigration is like a whirlpool in the ocean. You're going to jump into it, and it's going to be very hard to get out of it. So you need to understand what you're doing, what you're getting into. And when you put goals, your goal has to be good for today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, 20 years from now. Think about your goals not just for today or the next 5 years. Think about your goals for the next 20 years. Mine, sad to say, now that I'm thinking back, my goals were immediate and very, very short vision because I didn't know any better. There was nobody to ask. So I just had to do everything myself. That's why a lot of mistakes happen, and every mistake cost me money, time, and effort. So now that you have a plan A and understand what you should do, how your goal should be, how to itemize everything, the question is, or the statement is, you are as good as your plan B. Why? Plan B is your backup net. If this doesn't work, I'm going to do this. Just like coming from Egypt to the United States with a one-way ticket. If it doesn't work out, you're screwed because you don't have money to come back. So that's why when I came to the United States, for example, I had an open-ended ticket for like almost 3 years. I said, at least, if things go bad, I know I have money to go back. I can just go home. So that is a plan B. Plan B is you're going back. What happened if things didn't go as you wanted? So, as we say, you are as good as your plan B. Why plan B? Why do you need to have a plan B? So many reasons. Here is a few. Work is not good. Whatever job you landed is not good. If you came with a contract, it's not good. The girl that you get married to, you came and you found that she's a hoe. Whatever. She's just not as good as you thought. She's not as nice as you thought. Whatever. So, something went wrong. The work you have, or the life, or the thoughts you had, or whatever, is not as easy as you thought. And you hated it. You don't like it. As easy as it can be. People don't like you. Could happen. I lost jobs because people don't like me. I have managers hated my guts. Why? I don't know. But they don't like me. Okay? So there is a lot of other things that could stop what you're doing. So now, how to immigrate correctly. Again, correctly is a very gray word. Depending on now, how to immigrate correctly. Again, correctly is a very gray word. Depending on who you're asking and what they're thinking and what their capability. But so many different ways. If you came with a contract, if you have a tourist visa, and he came here and found an attorney that he can work the tourist visa to a green card or whatever, or you got married from somebody there or got married from somebody here, found a job or a sponsor that can have you here, the lottery. Sometimes people put their name in the lottery to come to the US, or you open a business in Egypt and you kind of, have a visa because of your business. My whole point is there's so many ways to come to the States. We're not expert on how to come here, but if you came here, that's our biggest thing. That before you leave, and from day one, when you arrive, when you come here, your goals have to be clear. 5 years from today, what am I going to be doing? 10 years, 20, and when you're 60 years old, what are you going to be? This is really important questions. If you are under 20s, again, you have the time to make mistakes and stand up and, clean yourself up and start over. But if you're 30s or 40s, is different. And for crying out loud, if you are 30 and have a wife in Egypt and kids, and you're really thinking about coming here with your kids and your wife, and you're over 30, brother, please reconsider. I promise you, it's not going to be as good as you think. There's a lot of things you're going to lose. I hope you saw part 1 and part 2 of this discussion. But anyway, one of the other questions that you really need to ask yourself, and you need to be absolutely 100% sure about the answer, if you came here as a single guy, or came with your wife and kids or whatever, am I going to stay here in the United States forever? Or I'm going to be here for a few years and go home? If you have kids, I beg you, and I'm on my knees begging you, think before you decide to stay here for the rest of your life. If you have kids, you really have to understand what you're doing. If you have kids under 10 years old, whatever the kid's age is, you have up to 10 years and you really need to go home. But if you decide to stay, we told you what we can, and we hope that you listen to us. If you're not married and you're a single guy, you really need to ask yourself, am I going to marry an American wife or an Egyptian wife? What am I going to do? How I'm going to do it? I think we'll put some answers to these questions earlier on. So we hope that you saw everything we just said. And again, just to be sure, here is why. If you're going to stay in America, or if you're going to stay in Egypt, or if you are going to marry an American wife, or if you're going to marry an Egyptian wife, there is all so many different steps to that. If you're going to stay in America, there is a very different way you approach it. Now you need to understand how you're going to live, how long, my goal, am I going home or not? That's the questions. If you're going to stay in Egypt, okay, or you're going to go back to Egypt, okay, how many years do you have? Who I'm going to marry? Am I going to have kids or not? What am I going to do with them? All these kind of questions. And if you're going to marry for an American wife, this is the hardest thing you will ever do. Not because she's bad. Not because she's bad. It's just the laws did not serve and does not protect man in the United States. It does not protect the men, protect the women completely. And the chances for success, if you are an American couple, as in 2 Americans, both Christians, again, 8 out of 10. If you are coming from Egypt with a Muslim background and all that, it is very different, and it's a great, great challenge. So far, we haven't seen one successful couple made it to 20, 30, 40 years. And if there is any, please call us, educate us on how you did it. Would love to hear from And if you're going to marry an Egyptian woman, again, if you trust her 120,000%, and you're going to bring her with you to the United States, you have 10 years until you have a kid. I mean, when you have a kid, you have 10 years. After this, you have to go home. If you don't, I'm almost going to promise you, you will regret it. This is facts, okay? People change. Two things are facts in life. Two things are facts in life. You will never change. We're all going to die, and things will change. People will change. Countries will change. You're going to change. Change is inevitable. Two things guaranteed in life: death and change. Can whatever situation that you're going to put yourself in stand this change, and the change will be okay, and you're going to live with it? That's the question that you really, really need to understand what you're doing. The difficulty of marriage between American couples and international couples, or interracial couples, not international. Take two. The difficulty of marriage between American couples is tremendous. And interracial couples is even at least 5 times harder. So think about this before you take this step. So change is inevitable. Here's why change will be inevitable. Temptation. Temptation with representation. What representation that might tempt you to change? A lot of things. Money, power, religion, sex, citizenship. All these things might tempt you to change, whether you change completely or partially. For example, you got offered money, okay, to change. Whatever the change is, you might do. The church, they can tell you just if you become Christian or Jehovah's Witness will take care of you. The hope is that when you stand on your own feet, you stay with them. Now they're going to make money off you. It's a business. Power. That's a lot of things, you know. I have a friend of mine, I haven't seen him for 25 years. His name is Fauzi. Fauzi was more religious than any religious person I ever knew in my life. He came to the United States, married a very rich woman, never saw him again. He left Egypt 1980 or 81. I was still in college. I never heard from him after he left, and I never heard of him ever again. That's power and money. He married the girl, lived his life. Last ever thing I heard about him from another friend of mine in Egypt said, yeah, Fauzi, now you wouldn't even know him. Cigars and drinking and a whole different person. And his wife is the gorgeous looking model with high heel, short skirts. Temptation. So think. And the things that you do for a citizenship, some people denounce their own country. And some Egyptian people came to the States, have a legal asylum to get a citizenship. Temptation with representation. Change. And some people came here on the hope to marry somebody that she brought him here, and after here in the United States. So after the girl sent him the invitation and whatever, and he came to the States to marry her, she changed her mind. Now he did whatever he can to stay in the United States, and that's when he applied for legal asylum and to get the citizenship. Temptation to change is very, very easy thing to happen. Immigration, or leaving your country, or living here. Another thing I always look at is almost like a chess match. The two people, or the person outside, always see more than the people in the game. So he always tell them what's good, what's bad, and he see the good plays. Somehow I feel that I am the one that's sitting outside, or we are the one that's sitting outside, and we're just looking on the whole thing right now a little bit with a better understanding. And that's why we hoping to help somebody decided to leave Egypt and come here. We hope you don't. Nobody ever, I never heard anybody immigrated to the United States or Europe and was honest with everybody when he came back to Egypt and talked with us. At home, when people went, this is one of the biggest problems that I personally had all my life. People go to Europe or the United States, okay? Then they come back to Egypt to visit in the summer month. This has been going on all my life, since I was in junior high, high school, all the way. And they are brothers, cousins, family, friends. They go to Italy and the US and England and Belgium, so many different places. And they come back and they're telling us about the beauty and the most wonderful God's Eden on earth that's called Europe or the United States or whatever. And all we're hearing all our lives, how the West is so beautiful. And if you leave Egypt, that's it. You just left everything bad behind you, and now you're going to the United States or Europe. Life is easy. You just go there and there's money and beautiful girls and limos waiting for you at the airport and just wonderful. It's not. I worked my ass off for 20 years to have what I have right now. Really hard. But everybody left. They come back and they look down on everybody in Egypt. And they talk to us like we are nothing. They go to Europe or the United States, work as a janitor or a plumber or washing dishes, and he lives with 5, 6, 7 people in a room, save every penny he makes, or every lira or drachmas or Deutsch mark or whatever. Then he comes to Egypt with a nice suit, dressed like a king, and he's talking to us like we're nothing. So that's what we lived with all our lives. Then you have songs talk about what a beautiful place the West is. Sayyid Darwish, God bless him. هتجني يا ريت يا اخوانا ما رحتش لندن ولا باريس. Sayyid Darwish had this song, if you ever heard it, and hundreds of songs talk about the beauty of Europe. And when we want to show off in front of people, we talk about, I got this from Europe, or I got this from the United States. Yeah, that's an Italian suit. We sold that dream to each other all our lives, to the point that when you finish college, there is no other way to think. All you want to go to this perfect God's Eden on earth. Then when you come, it's really not. Completely not. And there is so many things we didn't understand. So, I know that the examples that telling you about all this are usually family, friends, all the songs, all the movies that you watch all your life about how beautiful Europe is, or how much the US use the media of movies and TV to show you that this is the perfect country in the world. Leave your home, your parents, your friends, and come live here. So that's why everybody is so dying to come to the United States. It's not as easy as it looks on TV. It's a lot of work. And in the end, if you are successful, and if you're lucky enough to make money, that money comes with a lot of loss that you will never understand it until you either listen to somebody like me, and I think I'm the only one ever said this on the internet, or you have to come and live it yourself. Then 20 years from now, you might be sitting in my place trying to advise somebody else on what we're talking about today. I hope you don't do that. The other magic act that you really have to know how to live is how can you maintain two cultures. I'm from Egypt. I live in the United States. I am Muslim. I live in a Christian country. I have all my customs and traditions in Egypt that it's really hard to do here. And try to maintain that balance. It is almost impossible. If you got an Egyptian that's trying to live in the United States as Egyptian, it's not going to happen. If you got an American that want to live in Egypt as Egyptian, it's not going to happen. We speak in two different everything. Two different language, two different customs, two different traditions, two different background, two different attitude, two different visions, two different everything. So now let me ask you this. When you come to live in the United States, what are you going to be? And if you answer that question to yourself, what's your kids going to be? And if your kids answer that question, what's their kids going to be? When you answer these questions, you're a much better man than I am. Because I have no idea what to do. But I'll tell you what I did. Because I think it was the most logical thing to do. To kind of separate all this culture, customs, and tradition, and family values, and the way of life. Because there are some things I could not fathom living with them. Imagine if you are a father and your son came to you and tell you I'm gay. We said that before. Or your daughter came and said I have a boyfriend. These are the things I could not deal with, ever. So I decided to be by myself. It's easier that way. I can control me, and I am the only victim of my own decision, is I'm going to live by myself. I don't want to put myself in a situation that I'm going to find myself doing something wrong or responding to it wrong. I don't want to do that. So I decided, instead of Mu'taz and Dean, Mu'taz lives in Egypt and Dean lives here. So that's why everybody knows me as Dean. Dean lives in the United States. He tried to cope with that and everything is fine. When I go home, I'm Mu'taz. So Mu'taz lives in Egypt. Dean lives in the United States. They never meet. They never talk. They never live in the same atmosphere. That flight to Egypt, that's my decompress and my changing to become Mu'taz. When I'm coming back, I change to become Dean. These two people will never live each other's world. Dean cannot live in Egypt. Mu'taz cannot live in the United States. It might sound crazy to you. I totally understand that. It might sound extremely crazy to you. But that was my logic. That was my choice. That's what I'm living with. Do I regret it? Sometimes. Do I like it? Sometimes. If I have to go back and redo my life again, I would have probably either did the same thing or left after 3, 4, 5 years. So I know this is all sound a little bit negative and we're talking about the losses and whatnot. I understand. I don't mean to sound negative and My goal is not to make you hate immigrating to the United States or America or another country. But there is a lot of good things came from immigration. There's a lot of good things came when I came to the States. There's a lot of good things I did, and I'm enjoying my life. I'm having a good life. I love to fly, and I like to hunt. I like my boat, and I'm having a good life. But the thing is, it came with a lot of loss. I lost having a wife to wake up with every day. I lost having my kids with me every day. I lost raising my kids the way I want. I lost having a family. So in a way, there is a loss. But the loss outweigh the gain. The gain is just basically, I have a great debt of, gratitude to the United States, to America. Give me a home, made money, lots of education. But again, the problem is it came with a lot of loss. The family thing, I never had it. And it's very hard to live for the rest of your life knowing that. Or you can risk it and have it, and God knows what happened. But again, statistics, indications, it's really says that the failure rate is almost 99%. Or you have to live for the rest of your life, just you cannot look to yourself in the mirror, which is, it's your choice. Again, the only thing was really hard for us in the matter of immigration and whatnot, and leaving home and coming to the United States, is perception. Perception is a reality. Sometimes when people see things, they believe it is. We looked at movies all our lives. We looked at, we listened to radios, read books, listened to family members, friends, neighbors. When they come back from overseas, or they come back from Europe or the United States, and they talk about all these wonderful things, that's all you believe. And actually we have some videos that, just watch them. As you can see, it all talk about everything just wonderful outside Egypt. So you systematically learned when you're very young that you're living in a place that it's much worse and outside is much better than where you live. So obviously when you grow a little bit older, that's all you're thinking. That was my dream all my high school and all my college days, is to finish and go to this wonderful world that outside the borders of Egypt. So that's what we're trying to say, that immigration is not a horrible thing, but it's not as good as you're thinking or as good as we thought, and it comes with a great, great loss. I think we function by the word that I just put it together. It says ignorance made you write it. Ignorance made you write it. But at the end, there it is. The whole idea is, I always hoped and I wished and I worked really hard to come to the United States. And I came to the United States. And when I found out that that's not what I was looking for, I'm not going to get what I want out of it, it was too late. I am here and I cannot do anything about it, so I made the best out of it. And the best out of it was to live my life the way I live it, and I have to lose what I lost. That was my life. And I hope you have people that have better feedback than that. And I am sure that if you compared what I said and what they say, they're probably going to have a different perspective. But I promise you, there are some things will be exactly the same. The one other thing that I would like to mention, because it was very, very important to me, was the value of a good friend. I have my best friend in the world. Her name is CJ. She helped me with everything, the way I thought, the way I processed things. She was like a big, huge rock that I leaned on whenever I needed to. My whole point is, if you're really going to immigrate and live in another country, I hope you'll be as lucky as I am to find a good friend that you trust with your own life 110%. Because that will make all the difference in the world to have such a friend when you live by yourself in a foreign land. The last thing I'm going to tell you, be careful of what you wish for. You might have it or it might happen. So be absolutely careful of what you wish for. It might happen. That was the issue for today, or our today's discussion. If you agree or disagree, or you want to advise us or give us a feedback or comment, please do. We would love to hear from you. اللهم بلغت اللهم فاشهد. السلام عليكم.
بحبك يا بلادي يا مصر، بحبك بحبك يا مصر، يا بلادي يا بلادي، بحبك يا بلادي.